Hey guys, this week's podcast features Zilly Rosen, the owner of Zillycakes. Zilly came down, talked about her start in the baking world, her famous Obama cupcake portrait, and what she has in store for 2013. Let's get to it.
It was for almost a month now, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
Our last day was March 8th. We were open on March 8th, and then we closed our doors after that.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting a lot of emails, but it's, it's good. The transition it was the right time for me.
Yeah. Has it been kind of interesting not having to...
Well, the first month I was really busy with the transition, trying to get Wendy Eggeloff from Firefly.
Yeah, she's moving into the space.
She's moving into the space at 1008 Elmwood, and just trying to get everything sort of squared away with her and move all of my stuff. I mean, she purchased everything at the shop.
Okay.
Move it. I had a lot. I'm a pack rat. I had everything.
I've been in there. It's a pretty busy place.
Yeah, every corner was jammed, and you didn't see the backspace, which was just more. So she actually, the first day after we were, we were open on the 8th, and on the 9th, I took all the girls that were working for me, I took them to Niagara on the Lake.
Oh,
we got
nice.
pedicures, and we went to tea at the Prince of Wales, and just totally decompressed, and it was great. It was a great way to celebrate, going through that together, because the last 2 weeks were like, they were crazy, which was wonderful, all the outpouring of love and stuff. Yeah. But at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday after we closed, Wendy was there starting to move stuff. So we were all sort of like, I felt guilty. I told her it felt like being a ghost at my own estate sale. So she, that was that all of the rest of March was just trying to get everything out so she could do her renovation.
Okay.
And she's doing some really neat things in the space. It's going to be really different.
Yeah, we've been to her East Aurora location.
Yeah.
It's very nice out there.
Yeah,
so.
and she's going to have a lot of seating in the Elmwood space, which is very different from what I had.
Yeah.
And my studio now is further back in the space.
Okay.
And it's just perfect. It's perfect for me. It's everything I need, and then everything of mine that she doesn't need and that I don't need is down in the basement. So it's just, there was people in their stuff. That's all it was. It was moving things. It was like a big Tetris puzzle.
Yeah.
In March, and then I took off for a week with my kids to Disney World.
Very nice.
Which is intense and awesome and crazy.
How old are your kids?
They're 8 and 11.
Oh, my God.
But I think I enjoyed it more. I stood in line to see Merida by myself. Merida's from Brave, if you're not a Pixar freak.
I'm catching up.
Yeah. She has red hair, and she's very independent and
nice,
sassy. So that
it appeals to.
It does. And anyway, I need a little vacation from my vacation.
Yeah.
So this week was very different pace, because I could come back and start looking forward instead of trying to close up and tie up and clean up,
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit more of a taste of what the next couple months and years are going to be like for me. And
nice.
Yeah, so I cooked dinner for my family every night this week. That
nice,
felt good.
Nice.
And started doing some yoga, so I'm sore. And went in, did a little bit of work every day. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. The things that I'm working on right now, besides planning this sort of collaboration with Wendy, and she still hopes to be open in about a month. That's all dependent on city, but she hopes to be open in spring. So, I'm working with her on plans. I still have about 15 weddings that are planned for this summer.
Yeah.
So I'm working on those. And I have a book that contract's just about to be signed on.
Wow.
So I'm starting to work on some recipes for that.
That's really awesome.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's called Petite Treats.
Okay.
So it's a book about, small is in.
Okay.
So it's a book about, it's all desserts and they're all tiny.
Nice.
So that's going to be fun to work on.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
This summer. And then I'm doing a visiting artist program with the Buffalo Public Schools, and I have some visits scheduled for this month and next month.
Very cool.
So yeah, so
you're keeping busy.
I am, and it's what's really nice for me is that when I had the day-to-day running of the shop, as the years went on, I had to wean back from the things that I really loved doing, which were the crazy projects and the teaching gigs and the cookbooks, all of those things I did, excuse me, quite a bit of at the beginning.
Yeah.
But as it went on, I just, I had to sort of put the nose to the grindstone and do the running of the shop. So, so this opens me back up for those crazy, bigger whims.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So when the store was closing, I saw that it had been open for about 4 years.
Correct.
I'm not too familiar with your background. How long before that did you start getting into the culinary scene?
There's a couple different answers to that question.
Okay.
But the clearest answer I can give you is that when I was 15, I went to look for my first job, and actually it found me. I was thinking about trying to get a job in retail, selling shirts, the Gap, something like that.
Yeah.
And I went to a gourmet bakery in town. I lived in Evanston, Illinois. I went to a gourmet bakery and walked in to buy a $25 cake for my girlfriend's birthday.
Yeah.
Now I'm 15. That's $25, and that's, let's see, I was 15, and that was 30 years ago.
Okay.
So that was a really expensive
cake.
Yeah,
I was going to say, you're dropping some cash there.
And the woman said, who are you? I said, I'm Zilly. I'm an artist. Are you good with your hands? I said, absolutely. And she invited me to be the cookie girl for Christmas, and I did 10 Christmases with her. Nice. So, all of my training was on the job, and if you've been through a Christmas at a bakery that does a lot of cookies and pies and cakes, it's madness.
You're putting your time in there.
That's right. So, I really had a good feel for what the business was like. And then I went to college for art, and then I was signed up to do a graduate program in art education. But between those two school gigs, I did some traveling, did some other things, and I worked at another bakery in St. Louis this time. And instead of cookies, it was tarts. But same sort of high quality ingredients, small operation. So by the third time I took a job at a bakery, it was I was here in Buffalo.
Okay.
And I was married and had 2 children. And when my youngest, William, who's 8 now, was old enough to go to daycare twice a week in the mornings, I had been a stay-at-home mom for 5 years, and I ran off to get a job. Just so, and it seemed like baking was what I always did when I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. When I wasn't doing school, or I wasn't teaching, or I didn't have a studio making art, I would go back into baking just because I love it. So that's, my husband finally said at that point, maybe this is the right direction for you since you keep going back to it. And at Dolce, they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm 40 years old. I've been the cookie girl all my life. It's time to be, it's time to be the cake lady. So they said, well, how do you want to go about that? And they started me on just the production cakes.
Yeah.
But I would make a cake and stop and stand back and look at it, and
the artist was coming.
That's right, and they wanted somebody who was just going to fire it off, and that's definitely not me. Anybody that knows me knows that's not. I can do it if I'm rolling cookies. I can rise to that occasion, but Kevin Gardner, who now owns 5 Points.
Okay, yes, yeah.
He said, Zilly, I think you'd be good in weddings, and where you really could spend that time. And what I brought to that was my own sort of style of dealing with the client, as I would with one of my students in an art project, where instead of trying to say, this is what you want, these are your choices, choose 1 through 10. It was more of an exploration with the client, where I would find out about them and try to draw out of them what they were interested in.
Yeah.
What style would fit them, what excited them about, possible ideas for their cake. And I'm great at reading body language. So, and after teaching art, I would never, when somebody was working on a creative project, say, this is what you have to do. I would say, well, I see this issue, or this looks, these are 3 different ways I could see to solve this problem, and then give them options. So I'm really good at that of, we could do this or this or this.
Nice.
And then people, I think, very quickly figured out that they could come to me for the crazy ideas. Yeah, like, all right, this is going to sound crazy, but could you? And always my answer was yes. Not only could I do that, but have you thought about this and this and this?
Yeah.
So that's, I love that part of the work. It's hard to make a living on custom work because it's so labor intensive. And on something that's edible, there's a ceiling price people seem to be.
Yeah.
If you're buying a sculpture that's out of marble, it's going to be around forever, and a wedding cake is not. And sort of getting over that.
Yeah, yeah.
Getting people to look at it as an art object, even though it's ephemeral, and it's going to be, gone. That's the challenge.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, that's the challenge, because most people, there's a wide range of what people are interested in and what they're willing to pay. So.
Yeah, that's got to be a little challenging and hard to, I would assume, make your case without seeming overly pushy or preachy or any of that.
Exactly. Because at the beginning, I just wanted the work.
Yeah.
And then I also, I'm generous, and I don't want to take advantage of people, and I don't want to put the hard sell on people, and so I would almost all the time do it for less than I should have.
Yeah.
Often for half of what I should have. But it's funny because I would put the number out there, and it would seem big to me, and then I'd finish the cake, and I would realize it was much, my estimation of how long a cake would take.
I mean, that stuff, I would assume the business side of it was probably some of what, like, you have to learn it on the go. I don't know how involved you were with your other jobs, if you're just baking, but...
No, I mean, it's interesting because I'm good at math.
Yeah.
And I could observe things in those other jobs, systems that needed improving.
Yeah.
And I'm good at making systems, but business is a whole nother language. And managing employees is very different than being a teacher and having students, or being a mother and having children, because you never fire your students and you never fire your children. And I found business and employee management very challenging. It just wasn't something that I was a natural at or good at or able to improve at quickly. So that was always a challenge for me. And this is off subject, but not really. I think because I'm such a technician in the area, in the art, that I would have benefited from going into business with somebody who was the business side.
Yeah.
I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but that's the advice I would give anybody who's like me, who really wants to make the cakes and thinks it would be great to open a business. I would say, you want somebody behind the scenes who just likes to play the game and win the game.
Yeah.
And the game is the numbers and the
go home with a couple bucks.
Yeah, exactly. And I was lucky on those big cakes when we broke even, because it always took longer than I expected.
Yeah.
My husband calls it the factor. He says you have to figure out what your factor is and then multiply. So if I think it's going to take me an hour, it'll take me 3. My factor is 3. If I think it's going to take me an hour and it takes me 6, my factor is 6. So he was always trying to work with me on using that multiplication factor to price my cakes. I never did.
Yeah. What do you think it was about baking per se? Because I've noticed, like, from having people down here, like we've had Deb Clark.
Yeah. I talked to her today. She said it's cool in the basement.
Good. I'm glad she approved.
She said I've done that before.
I feel like there's almost a different mindset between a baker and a cook.
Completely.
And I'm never sure. Like, were you ever interested in the other world, in the kitchen or anything like that?
I was. I mean, I cook. Well, my husband would laugh because I stopped cooking the 5 years that I owned the business. And he did all the cooking. But I got him to marry me because I cooked for him. So, well, at least I got him to propose to me because I cooked for him. But I'm not somebody. Well, now I am. But I was always afraid of just, like, it seems to me like chefs can just sort of throw in amounts and eyeball and get it and have a real feel for it. And baking is really about measuring. It's more of a science.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really improv on the go with making a cake. At least the structural part of it.
Right. I mean, over the years owning Zillycakes, I got really good at working with my bakers to adapt recipes and change them and bring different flavors into some really good basic recipes.
Yeah.
And I think once you learn the rules and you've mastered the basics, you can play around with substitutions. But baking is just, if you don't like to measure off and level a cup or a teaspoon of dry ingredients, you don't belong in the kitchen.
Yeah.
My 3-year-old, when my oldest is 11 now, when she was 3, she could do the dip and sweep method on the flour, and she knew how to separate an egg, and it's very exacting that way.
Yeah.
And it's very repetitive.
Yeah.
I think it's a little more slow-paced and methodical and repetitive and meditative than cooking is.
Yeah, it seems like you can really get into a zone, especially I'm assuming at Christmas cookies, like you were like zoned in and like.
Yeah, I actually made a piece of fine art that had to do with working at this bakery that I grew up working at, it was tough. The owner she was very opinionated. She was talented. I learned a lot from her.
Yeah.
But she wouldn't let you talk. And so I eventually got to the point where I thought of, she had my body in my hands, but not my mind. So my mind would just sort of go elsewhere while I was working and doing this repetitive work.
Yeah, yeah.
And because I couldn't talk, but that didn't mean I couldn't talk to myself inside my own head.
To help pass the time.
But there is something in that, repetitive motion that you start to have muscle memory for it, and it frees you up creatively in your mind to think of other things.
I mean, do you bake for family and friends? Is that something that you've at the shop you were like, okay, I'm done.
Completely. The minute I started working at Dolce, I stopped baking at home. Before that, at Christmas, there were thousands of cookies on my dining room.
You must have been
tables.
the go-to family member.
Oh, my God. And then, everybody was that's why my husband said, look, you do this to unwind. You do this, both my kids were born, though, right at Christmas time. So those years, the cookies were pink and blue.
Nice.
Because I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl instead of red and green.
Very cute.
But I did a lot of baking as in high school, college, and then after. I think college and the years after, that's when I did the most cake baking.
Okay.
I was a member of the Cookbook of the Month Club.
Nice.
Yeah. And I remember a delivery came and I opened it and it was Rose Levy Berenbaum's The Cake Bible.
Okay.
And I said, I've found religion. So I baked my way through that. I had a couple other friends who were interested in that, and we did this sort of dueling fancy cake off over the course. When you're in your 20s and
that sounds like a great
other people are making dinner and you bring the dessert. But as soon as I worked at Dolce, and I did at Dolce, I didn't really bake the cakes. I baked the cookies and the tarts, but I did the cake decorating. Mm-hmm. And, I think for me, once I had access to a commercial kitchen like that, it's much harder to bake at home.
Yeah.
And then when I owned my own shop, I'm going to give you this is a great confession. I never baked a single cupcake.
Oh, really?
Not a single one. I can bake. I know how to bake. I've got a great palate.
Yeah.
And I made frostings. I did other things.
Yeah.
But there were so many things to be done at the shop. I always knew I had to have a baker. Mm-hmm. I had to hire a baker.
Yeah. Right
from the beginning, the number, it's going to be me and a baker. That's all I intended.
Yeah.
And then at one point there were 16 people. But
wow.
Yeah. But at the end, I kept saying nobody gets sick because I want to make it through my streak of 4 years with never having baked a single cupcake. I don't want to have to bake a cupcake on the last week. Don't make me do it.
Is there something about a cupcake that?
Oh yeah. Well, by then it was just I just thought it was hysterical that I owned this cupcake bar and I'd never baked one of the cupcakes.
Well, so I was gonna bring up the cupcake bar. I think my first encounter with the shop was at the cupcake bar. Me and my wife loved it, and we went back a couple of times after
because
she's a cupcake fanatic. Like I think she judged the Nickel City cupcake thing. Yes,
that's awesome.
She was one of the judges. So
that's awesome.
But and she wanted me to pass on that she's a big fan.
Excellent.
So.
I appreciate that.
Even though it wasn't particularly you, but it was your vision of the cupcake.
Well, and it was me. I mean, it was
you, but
it was my recipes. But I never I didn't physically. I had some very, very talented bakers throughout the years.
And I'm sure you were overseeing that. Not a crappy cupcakes going on.
Well, I mean, there were 6 different bakers that worked there over the 4 years, and the only employee that started at the beginning and finished at the end is me. So, but I always considered it a team effort.
Yeah.
And I just had many different members of the team over those years. But the quality of the product was important to me, both taste and visual. And I think I came up with the cupcake bar. Well, first of all, I originally was just going to be a little a design studio in a little garage off between Lafayette, right off the corner of Lafayette on Elmwood.
Okay.
There's a garage there right near Spoiled Rotten.
Yes, okay.
And I had it zoned to be my studio. So I was going to bake the cakes at Dolce and then decorate them at my studio.
Okay.
And then I was going to just have Dolce bake them for me, and I was going to decorate them at my studio. And it was taking the city so long to get my plans seen that while I was waiting, I went off and did those portraits of Obama.
Yes, which I want to get to, yeah.
Yeah, and that was when I realized there was a whole cupcake sort of world out there. There was a whole subculture that hadn't been tapped here and I hadn't considered.
Yeah, because this is 2008, and this is, I mean, I was going to talk to you, like, there seems to have been a cupcake boom in Western New York in the last, like, year and a half.
Yeah, it was in the last year and a half. So, but I incorporated in 2008.
Yeah.
And it was those, I always thought you had to have a bakery, like a bakery with lots of different things. And I knew I didn't want to own a bakery.
Yeah.
I'd been saying that ever since I was 15 because I knew it was too damn much work.
Yeah.
And I was right. The irony is eventually I ended up owning a bakery.
Yeah.
But I think what happened, a couple things happened. I did that portrait and I realized what a big deal it was. One was in November and one was in February of 2009. That was the one that went to the Smithsonian. Yeah, and we can come back to those.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So.
Those were amazing experiences. But that's what made me realize cupcakes were important and profitable, and that I could afford a larger space if I had a retail item, and I could have a cupcake bar where that was really all we offered was custom work on cakes and a cupcake bar for walk-ins.
Yeah.
And the cupcake bar, I felt like was something different. I like to eat cake that's completely fresh and moist with buttercream that's room temperature. I like Italian meringue buttercream. Okay. And so the minute a cupcake's been out in a case, depending on how well somebody has baked it and how well the case is working, it can go stale very quickly.
I've had plenty of stale cupcakes.
Right, and because you don't know how, the more reputable the joint, the shorter the time they've probably spent on the shelf. And some people, their product turns over in a day, and some people it doesn't. Yeah. So I wanted people to be able to come in, have a cake that I knew would be moist. Yeah. And the other thing I'll tell you is every single cupcake we baked was put in the freezer and then brought out in a tub and brought to room temperature in an airtight tub. Yeah. Nobody will tell you that they use the freezer. It's like taboo. But everybody does. I don't understand why everybody lies. I mean, it's like we think the consumers are stupid. Nobody, of course, everybody wants to believe it was baked fresh for you that day, right? Yes. But when there's 17 flavors of cupcakes and it's rainy and there's nobody on the street, you really think somebody's baking 17 flavors in one day?
And then just going to throw them all out.
Right. I mean, and we're green enough now that nobody wants that to happen. Yeah. There's only so many you can donate to charity. Yeah. So what we all do is bake on economy of scale and then use our freezers to the best of our ability. So I shouldn't say all. There's probably some people out there who will still say they don't. I don't want to call them liars. But with baked goods, air is the enemy, not temperature. Okay. So at the cupcake bar, everything was in an airtight tub.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And you would order it. We'd take it out of the tub, frost it. So I liked that. I liked that it was that fresh and moist and made right to order. I liked that the custom experience of the cupcake bar reflected the custom experience of the cake making. Yeah. So that's, I came up with that idea really just about a month before I opened my shop. Wow. And then,
That's worked out.
Yeah. Well, when the shop opened up at 1008, it was a doggy bakery.
Oh, really?
And I found it because I was looking for used equipment for my space over by Spoiled Rotten.
I see.
And I walked in, and my eyes kind of got big because it had everything I needed. It was all ready to go. Yeah. And but it was a lot more rent and a lot more space. So I talked to my husband, and we said, well, and that's the business plan changed completely.
Yeah. Wow.
I think it was fate.
Yeah. So. And so, I mean, you were really like the first cupcake shop, really.
It was. I mean, other
Buffalo.
Bakeries were making certainly.
Yeah, you could definitely.
But I was the first.
A dedicated,
I was the first cupcake bar by a couple of years.
Oh, I mean, I remember it was probably 2011 when I saw like Cupcake Orchard and those places start opening up, and all in the South Towns for some reason.
Right, and there were like 5 within like a couple months of each other.
Yeah. Like everyone was really excited to open up a cupcake shop apparently in the fall of 2011.
Exactly. I got nervous for people because I knew how much work it was, and I knew how expensive it was to get a shop off the ground, and I thought, just how many damn cupcakes are Buffalonians going to buy? But apparently a lot is the answer to that. I took my daughter a year ago to New York City for her 10th birthday, and we wanted to look up cupcake shops, and I put it on a Google Map or something, or Yahoo Map, and it looked like the plague. It looked like the boils had covered, I'm sorry, I bumped my microphone.
That's all right.
But there's like, there's
it's pretty ridiculous.
There must be as many of those as there are coffee shops. I don't know.
Yeah, it's insane. We were just in New York City, and we usually only go to Georgetown because that's my wife's like go-to favorite. Yeah. But yeah, like just like looking on Yelp or something like that, you could just get lost. You could spend a week just going to every shop.
I know.
I don't know how they do it, but
I don't either. Yeah. And so I felt like I held my own with all those shops that had opened up, and we were still very different. Our product was very different than all the other shops. I think we made a more eclectic product, and I think it had more sort of more cultural roots. Yeah. In the recipes and the flavors and the flavor profiles.
I agree with that.
But I also, I'm an artist. I like to do things that nobody's doing. So, in that way, I miss my shop, and I know people will miss the product, but I feel like there are other options now.
Yes, yeah.
And it's, I can forge ahead in some another unpaved road or territory.
So I guess keeping with the cupcake thing, I think we should talk about the Obama portrait. Yeah. So that blew up really quickly, it seemed. And
it's my first viral experience.
Yes, and I remember seeing it go viral. And then finding out that it was like a Buffalo connection. Like I was like, I remember seeing it, I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then like reading the fine print and be like, oh, wait. Yeah. Like how did that all begin? How did
well, first of all, I had thought I would have this shop open. This is how naive I was. City Hall told me it would take 6 weeks to get
I think
me.
A lot of people are naive with how quick they can open.
It would take me 3 to 6 weeks to get open. So I thought I'd be open by election day, in November, and I wasn't open until May the following year. So, originally I wanted to have a cool window to open up to start. And I thought, I'm from an art background, and I thought I'll do the candidates in little cupcakes with colored, frosting or fondant on the top.
Yeah,
and it's working with an image that's pixelized.
Yeah,
that's nothing unique or original. Chuck Close did it, 50, 60 years ago. And, and that was, he's the master at it. But so originally, so as not to turn off any customers, I was going to have both candidates. And then when it was clear I wasn't going to be open, I still kept thinking about wanting to do the project. Like then I had the bee in my bonnet, right?
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I could just do my candidate.
Yes.
And I'm a Democrat. I'm from Illinois. The writing's on the wall there. So I had been away to this big cake workshop in Chicago, and I came back really sick. And I thought, oh God, I'm not going to have time to do it. But I had to make it. It was in my head. I had to make it. So I at first I thought I would do it, and I would set it up at my church, which is the Unitarian Church of Buffalo. And they have a bake sale every election day. Well, that's because they're a polling place. So about a week before I was planning to do this, I realized I can't have an image of a candidate there. Like, I'm going to get shut down.
Yeah.
You can't even wear a T-shirt.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And,
not within like 100 feet
exactly.
or whatever. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, crap. So I thought, well, where am I going to do this? And then I was driving down Main Street, and I saw the Buffalo Obama headquarters, and I thought, that's it.
Nice.
I'll do it for them as a celebration. So I went in and talked to their director, and he said, okay, election day is going to be too crazy. Do it the day after. I said, fine.
Yeah.
So I have a friend. Yeah. And I said, that's great. It'll be hopefully a celebration.
Yeah, it'll be hopefully.
And if not, I'm celebrating his candidacy. I'm celebrating.
Yeah. There's plenty of good
the
things.
work that people say, well, if you hadn't won, would you still have made him? Hell yeah. So my friend who lives a block away from me is an artist, Shasti O'Leary Sudan, and she offered me her studio to set the portrait up in so we could take a picture of it. And it was the nicest day. I don't know if you remember, in 2008. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful. So I was in her studio. I had the big rolling doors open, and I was listening to NPR and making this portrait. And it was idyllic. And the first one I'd ever done, I had an image, but I didn't have it subdivided into grids.
Okay.
Into smaller sections.
Yeah.
And, the eye can take in like a 4x5 area and make sense of that. Mm-hmm. But the eye cannot make sense of a, 50 by 29, whatever, however many it was.
Yeah.
So, there was steam coming out of my ears all day trying to get these cupcakes in the right place.
Yeah.
Eventually I got it, and she took pictures. And this was where I really learned that one little thing can make all the difference. She put them up on Flickr, and she tagged them. And that was it. Wow. That was part of what helped it go so crazy, the original picture.
Yeah.
And she took some beautiful pictures. The other thing was what I did right, which was make it not just about me, but about others by taking it to the headquarters. So I took it to the headquarters and not only intended to show it there, but intended to serve it to them, let them take it home. Mm-hmm. And in taking it to them, I figured out how to do the next one, which was I took it apart into little small, like, home baking tins that you get two for $1 at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Like little Betty Crocker tins or whatever.
Yeah.
And then as I was taking them apart into these sections, I was like, I could do them in smaller sections. So that helped for later. But I took them all there, and the people were so excited, and I got to meet all these people and hear their stories about how they worked for the campaign, mm-hmm. and they were so excited about it, they called the press.
Wow.
So I didn't call the press for myself.
Yeah.
They called the press. And so the phone call coming from them made a much bigger impression. And so their photographer came out, and the news came out. But how quickly it took off was really... quite a shock to me.
Yeah. It just seemed like it was...
Because it was on the front page of the news the next day, so that would have been, to the 6th.
Yeah.
And AP picked up the image. Mm-hmm. So then that image showed up. I found it on websites in Japan and websites in Australia, and crazy.
Yeah.
Suddenly I had a Google presence, which I'd never had before. And then MSNBC picked up the footage, the TV footage, and my dad saw it in California like the next day. He's like, honey, awesome. You're on my TV.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that was really something.
Yeah.
And that was all before I was open or even had a storefront. You know? I baked all of those out of my home kitchen, and then when I did the piece for the Smithsonian, I baked those out of Dolce's kitchen, but like gypsy cake baker, off hours, nights, stuff like that.
How did the Smithsonian thing come about?
This is hysterical. I just asked. I just said, I want to do this, and what do you think? And they said yes. But the trick was getting the right channel, because my first idea was I want to do this bigger. My husband's cringing right now because that's always my answer. Like, this worked. Let's do it bigger. Let's do it 5 times as big with more colors. I wanted to do it for the inauguration, which was coming up.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a dual portrait of Obama and Lincoln. I knew that's what I wanted to do because I'd heard that the Gettysburg Address was going to be was the theme for the inauguration.
Okay. Or
A New Birth of Freedom, I think was the name of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I named the piece. I can't remember now. But so it tied into what I'd found out about the inauguration. Mm-hmm. But so I was first trying to contact politicians, and I couldn't get anybody to return my phone call. And I thought to myself, they all think I'm nuts. Who wouldn't think I'm nuts? And then I thought, artists would get it. It's a piece of art. It's a piece of propaganda too, but it's a piece of art.
Yeah.
and it's a dessert, but let's focus on the art part. And so then I sat down. It was one rainy Tuesday, and I sat down and I emailed all the different art museums in DC. But I was looking on their sites and trying to figure out who do I email. Mm-hmm. And the Smithsonian has a space called the Luce Center, or the Luce Foundation Center. And what appealed to me about that was that it was 3 stories tall, long and narrow, 3 stories tall, looking down.
Nice.
And I thought, that's the space this piece needs to be in. And they actually had an area where you could ask to use the space, but not personally. Like, you couldn't throw a wedding there.
Yeah.
As a corporation or a foundation, you could apply to use the space. Okay. So I applied via that form for the date I wanted, which was the inauguration. And I just put a couple of pictures of the piece that I'd already done and a 2-paragraph explanation of what I wanted to do. And somebody had to read that. And that somebody forwarded it to public programming. And the public programming woman, Joanne was her name, she had vision. Yeah. And she said, let's do this. But let's not do it on inauguration. Let's do it on President's Day weekend. She has a President's Family Fun Weekend. Yeah, President's Day Family Fun Weekend. Lots of programming, lots of people in the museum.
Nice.
So they brought me down to do that. I didn't get paid very much.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy because once she said, okay, let's do it, I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. Well, first she said, write me a proposal. I'm like, oh my God, what's that look like? Well, God, how am I going to do that?
Googling proposal.
I just made it up. I mean, and I think that's what's really so cool to me. And I believe this so much about creativity and a creative life is that if you are excited and you believe in what you're doing and you can find just one other human being to get excited about it and say, yeah, the rest is logistics. I mean, you know, and I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is people are going to say no. And I just asked and they said yes. And it just kept getting better. Like, as the momentum built, more obstacles popped up.
Yeah.
One of them was that at the time, Shepard Fairey, who's the artist who did the Hope poster, he was getting sued by AP, Associated Press, because he'd, assimilated a photograph, and then sort of worked it over. Well, I'd done the same thing. Ironically, my first one was one of his photos, so I'd assimilated his photo, but it was the new one that I was doing that I was concerned about. Because I had used a photo that I'd gotten off the internet, tried to get permission for it, but could never find out really who made it.
Yeah.
Well, I found out that week. I felt like I needed to do a little more digging because I was worried about what he was going through. Yeah. And it was an Annie Leibovitz photo.
Oh, okay.
Annie Leibovitz is very famous. Yeah. And so I thought, oh my God, of course. I've used like one of the most famous photographers' things, and somebody's going to ask me about it. And they did. I mean, I was right. Somebody, it was, copyright was a big deal that week. Yeah. And somebody did ask me. And I had just signed away my whole life on this contract with the Smithsonian saying I would get in front of any lawsuit that happened, which was nerve-wracking. So again, I went on Wikipedia, found out who represents her, called their office, wrote a heartfelt email, and called on Monday morning. And I said, I need permission to use this image. This is what I'm doing. He said, that's weird. That's cool. Okay, you can do it. I was like, oh my God, I just got rights to an Annie Leibovitz image. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, I think a lot of people don't try to do big, crazy things out of fear of those obstacles. But once the momentum of the creativity gets going and people buy into that, that can steamroll over any logistical,
Oh, God, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, that was the most exciting thing. And then all the press was just crazy. It was crazy. I was on NPR. I mean, I was pinching myself talking to Jackie Lydon. This is cool. Don't get me wrong. Jackie Lydon was really cool.
That's awesome.
So, yeah,
that's a fantastic story.
Yeah, and it was just it was a dream. It was crazy.
I mean, you mentioned that just having the will to just go for a crazy idea, and like walking through a shop, you see past cakes, images, and things like that, and just these crazy designs and artistic. Like if somebody wanted to make a very artistic or a very specific image cake, like your shop was pretty much the go-to in Buffalo.
Right. And what I want is to still be the go-to person for those things.
Yes, and you're still doing it.
Right.
Yes.
So this is what's so exciting to me, because as over the 4 years, I really found out what I like, what I don't like, what I love and what I don't love.
Yeah.
What I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and where I bring value. And that's where I bring the most value.
Yeah.
Because I have an artist training. I'm not afraid. I'm a great problem solver. So those are the projects I want to keep doing, are the ones that nobody else will say yes to, and nobody else could even figure out how to start.
Yeah.
And so I still own my business. It's still my business.
Yeah.
I still have a studio thanks to Firefly.
Yeah.
And I still have access to a kitchen. So it's really, for me, it's what I wanted from the beginning.
Yeah.
But now I have a name and a portfolio that backs up up the price I need to ask for these cakes.
I mean, with like the popularity of like Duff Goldman's show, which I can't think of the name of, and
Ace of Cakes,
and
Cake Boss,
yeah,
Buddy Velastro.
Yes, yeah. I mean, have you seen the demand for those more over the top designed cakes?
Absolutely. And the other thing that I saw is that people are willing to travel, like days, to get a cake or have them travel. Like, people are willing. I had 3 clients come to me, Buffalo or Western New York clients, who had contacted Cake Boss, found out it would be $5,000. We're considering it, but we're looking around for other options.
Oh my God.
So if he's told them $5,000, then my price of $1,500 doesn't sound so bad.
No.
And what I realized was, there is a demand for these more intense, crazy, high-end cakes.
Yeah.
That are more creative and more one of a kind.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah, it's very specific to the couple or whatever is
or
their
the event.
story.
Yeah. And people aren't frequently willing to pay that for a cake. Not for every birthday.
Yeah.
Maybe not for any birthday. 80th birththose get cool cakes.
Yes.
50th anniversaries get cool cakes. Retirements from a 50-year career.
Yeah.
Those are like the things that are, and weddings and bar mitzvahs, of course, are big deals. But I got to a point where, I'm an artist. I like to focus on one big project, and having to do even 4 cakes in a weekend and be 4 different places in my mind, and then logistically in deliveries, and manage the staff that needed to be there to support those 4 cakes. It was diluting what I like and where I bring the most value. And I was having to do cakes that other people can do to be able to afford my staff. So that's really what I needed to step out of and say, you know what, I'm more of an artist, and I'm going to do these things that I'm going to do fewer of them at a higher price, which they need to be because they're worth that. Yeah. And I'm I'm still available, but only for these things that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
And then the rest of my time can be filled spending time with my family. Yeah. And teaching others how to do some of these techniques that I've made up, or making up new techniques, or writing books. Yeah. Because I love to share that knowledge, and I love teaching. I love having students and being a mentor. How
hard is the trade-off between doing a really elaborate design on a cake and making sure that it also tastes very good, or at least the decorative parts of it and things like? Because I mean, there's always that fondant talk where people like just at the name of it are already sold off and things.
I think
like
it's easier to make a beautiful cake than it is to make a delicious cake.
Yes.
I think it's more important to have a delicious cake than a beautiful cake, because if it's not delicious, why the hell are you making it out of food? I'm not kidding. Yeah. If you want to be in an art form,
get some styrofoam or something.
Right. And they're, wedding cakes, the drier and denser the cake, the more stable it is, but that is no excuse for making a dry wedding cake. Yeah. But once you know how to bake and structure a cake to stand, I can teach people how to do that. Yeah. And then, I can teach people how to use, I can teach art. Yeah. I may not be able to teach you how to be an artist. Yeah. But I can give you art lessons in the medium of cake, and I can teach you basically the elements and principles of design, which apply to any medium in art, including cake. So I think for me, I'm lucky because I had both background. I mean, I have a sweet tooth that's crazy. I've been doing a lot
of... Do you still...
that's another subject. We'll come back to that. Yes, I can never have enough sugar. But, I'd been working at Gourmet Bakery since I was 15. And then, so I had that. I knew how to make a good baked product. I knew the right materials to use and the right methods to use. And then I studied art. But it was, I think I'm almost a better cake designer because I didn't go to culinary school or work under a chef. Because I didn't have anybody saying, this is how you do it. So I just made a lot of it up. And I used a lot of art techniques that I learned in different mediums in school. That transferred, that I, kind of went bubbled down through the crude oil, whatever, to come out in the cake making as a different technique that nobody else does. So I love that. I love doing that.
Well, I think your reputation locally definitely for making creative designs, I think, had to have been one of the reasons why you went on to Food Network to do and I can't think of the name of it. It's escaping me right now.
Challenge.
The Challenge, yes. Yeah. How did that happen?
Well, Challenge is interesting because it's the one show you can't. Well, it's not on anymore, but it's the one. Most shows have open call, so you can find it on Food Network and send in your information. Challenge was so popular, they call you, so they find you, and I think I'm guessing it might have been because of the Obama thing, but I also had a lot of cakes out there, and my website was getting a lot of hits, and they called one day. They called, and I just it was pretty exciting. And then you have to make a video.
Okay.
And then they have to interview on the phone, and you have to fill out a survey, and then they decide if they want to cast you. And they really cast you they cast you for a specific show in a specific role.
Okay.
So I was the crazy artist wild card on my show.
All right.
Yeah. And it was
because you've I think you've competed locally.
I competed in the Nickel City cake.
Nickel City, the cake. So was that before or after? That was,
I'm trying to think. I think I did the Nickel City before.
Yeah, so you had
two of those.
Yeah, some type of competition time.
And the big joke is that I'm slow as molasses. I am not. It costs me a lot to move fast, and I'm also a procrastinator, huge.
Yeah,
and those take a lot out of me, and I loved them. They were so much fun. They're total endurance sport.
Yeah.
And the other joke is that I don't ever win. I really don't think I ever would win. I don't do them to win. I think I'm too outside of the box, or I'm not mainstream enough to please the judges.
Yeah.
I'm not, and there's a little bit of that, I think, that's on purpose. Like, I know what everybody else is going to do, and I don't want to do that. And then in the competition, I see them do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I didn't want to do that. I knew you were going to do that. And they win with that. So I guess if I really wanted to win, I would do that. But I don't. It's more important to me to have integrity as an artist.
Nice.
Than to win $10,000. That sounds stupid, saying it out loud. But
whatever, it's very punk rock of you.
Yeah. I know.
Nice. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything there.
Good.
It sounds like you have some really cool things coming up, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the book when that surfaces. And all that
it
stuff.
Could be a year. These things take a long time.
I'm not expecting it next month. But.
I think it'll get published in England first, and then come to the States.
Nice.
But I'm just glad to have, my fingers in that. And then and there's 2 cake shows I'll be doing installations for coming up too. There's one is in Toronto in September, the end of September. That's called the Canada's Baking and Sweets Show, I think.
Okay.
It's a big show, and it's cool. And I think we're gonna do a giant, huge cupcake to feed 2,000 people.
Wow.
Or something. And then the other one is run by the same people, but it's gonna be in Chicago. It's the first year they're doing it in Chicago.
Okay.
In November.
Nice. That's very cool.
So those are coming up, and then hopefully some great commissions here in Buffalo.
Yeah. Well, Zilly, thank you so much for coming down here
and
telling me a little bit.
Fast 40 minutes.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.